Okay, well, first of all, I want to mention that this is about the breed standard that's here in Mexico. Some countries have different breed standards, like the US, because they follow AKC and the breed standard is slightly different. Same for Canada, the UK, and Australia, but the difference are very little. So this one's going to focus mostly on FCI, which is the Mexican breed standard. So the names of the sizes change. Like in the States, the intermediate size is called miniature, and the miniature is called toy. So just in case there is like a mix up with the names or confusion. Okay, so this is the latest breed standard. It was updated in 2014, but the first one was actually created in the early 50s. And this one is the latest update. The breed standards have updates every now and then. So this one is the latest. Xolos are divided in 3 sizes, as you already know. The toy or the miniature is a companion dog, and the other 2 sizes are considered watchdogs. It's classified as primitive breed, so it's in group 5 for FCI. In the US, it's considered non-sporting. The breed is mostly, so to say, hairless because everybody knows it as a hairless breed. And only those that are actually involved in the breed know that there's a coated. So it wasn't until 2007 that the coated were accepted for breeding and showing. In the beginning, they were accepted like all coats and all colors. And later on, they decided to just accept short coat to match the short coat of the hairless because the mohawk is supposed to be short. Anyway, so they were accepted and allowed to be bred to hairless. I think this is very important. Like you can see this female, she had a litter of all hairless because a lot of people think that breeding to coated will give you a lot of coated, and that's bad. But in reality, thanks to the coated, the hairless are alive and they survive. So I think preserving the coated is very important. So here again, they mentioned that breeding to coated is not allowed. Why? Because breeding is supposed to be done to preserve the breed, and the breed is both hairless and coated. And if you breed two coated, you only get coated. So you're only preserving half of the breed. That's why it's not allowed.
Makes sense.
And I've heard a lot of people saying that the best breeding is coated to hairless. No, it's not. The best breeding is healthy to healthy, typey to typey. If you breed a dog that's hairless but looks like a pit bull to a coated, that's not a perfect breeding. So here we need to be very committed. If we're gonna be breeding, it's because you're choosing healthy and typical dogs. Doesn't matter if they're hairless or coated. They're healthy and typical. So then again, this is it mentions that the breed is primitive and it should be moderate in all aspects. What does this mean? If you think of the animals that are, or the dogs that are like loose here in Mexico, they are not giant or teeny tiny. They are medium sized. They don't have long hair. Ears are always up. So you have to think of what survives. A really big dog will not survive. So I think this is a key word in the breed, moderation. You don't want a dog that's too heavy or too thick or too tiny because, oh, I'm breeding toys, so they should be super small. No, they shouldn't. They should look like Xolos, just smaller. So here we see a miniature and a standard. You see the same type. They look like Xolos because then again, we keep looking at miniatures or toys and they don't look like Xolos. They just look like hairless something. So this is very important as well, that we keep the type. They should be identical. Okay, so the hairless, the main characteristic, of course, is hairlessness. They should have smooth skin, and they always lack some teeth. I mean, I say always, but breeders have been working to improve this. However, the gene that makes them hairless will always affect dentition. So this is something that you cannot just improve and magically get all teeth. You're gonna be missing at least a couple. And in the coated, they are like same type, short, smooth coat. This is very important. It should be tight, flat, and smooth. No undercoat. They shouldn't look like a Maltese or a poodle. They should have the same coat and type of the hairless. And if the breed standard asks for a very short hair, why would you want a coated with long hair? So here's where you have to see that the breed is the same regardless of the variety. Like there's a picture of two miniatures. You see the same type. The head is the same. The only difference is one has coat. Now here are several examples. We have all three sizes, and you see they all have the same type. I don't know if you can see which ones are the miniatures or the toys in this slide. But the three sizes, they look the same. They're moderate. They are not extremely big. They're not teeny tiny. They're not super thin either. So this is what we want. A primitive dog that's moderate, regardless of the size or the coat. Proportions. They are slightly longer than taller. Females can be longer than the males, but this is something that, at least in the show ring, we're starting to see a lot of short in body, and it's not correct. We should be checking the proportions of the dog. Also, if we have a dog that's too long, it's not correct either. There should be moderate again. And now for the head, the breed standard mentions that skull and muscle are of the equal length. In AKC, it's different. So you can see Mexican dogs that have like a different expression than the American bred Xolos. Because in the States, they ask for a longer muscle, and it says visibly longer. So it doesn't mean it's wrong, it just means that you're gonna see some variety in the expression compared to the Mexican bred dogs. I personally feel this one is correct because this is how they looked when they were recovered from Tierra Caliente, and the first breeding group was found. So I like to follow this instead. Now all three sizes should be the same proportion. They should look moderate but muscular. Selena. And also the breed standard mentions that the distance from elbow to the ground is equal or slightly larger than the distance from withers to the elbow. So when you see the dogs stacked, we stack them for a reason. So you can see the proportions. You can see that the dog doesn't have like short legs and it's too long in body. So that's why we have to like measure it. And maybe not be super specific in the show ring, but you can visibly notice when a dog is too long in legs or too short in legs. So here you see it's three sizes, two varieties, one breed. They have the same type and proportions, but within their size. You see how they look the same. A toy Xolo should not look like an Italian Greyhound or like a Chihuahua. It should look like a Xolo. I don't know if there's any question until now.
Yeah, there's one question by Michelle. She asked, I see all different types of hair in coated Xolos. Is long hair typical? Are coated Xolos sort of a wild card when it comes to their coat?
Here's what happened. When the breed was rescued from the wild, they did had some coated, but they thought that it was because they were bred to random strays. So they used to call them like jump backwards, meaning it was like looking like the relative that was not Xolo. So at first they thought they were a mix, so they were not paying attention to the coated. And then they discovered that they are actually part of the breed, so they stopped either separating them or culling, of course, because we all know that it happened. There's no point in saying that it didn't happen when it's part of the history of the breed. They did kill the coated for many years, thinking they were mixed. So in 2007, the coateds are approved because the gene pool of the Xolo is very small, and we were losing a lot of good dogs by neglecting the coateds. So the coateds get approved, but since in so many years nobody ever paid attention to them, we didn't know how they looked. So every coated was accepted as long as it came from two hairless parents. So of course at first you saw long coat, wire coat, because in the hairless you cannot see it. You just see a mohawk, and not all dogs have it. And the ones that have long mohawk, you can just trim it and show it like that, which is cheating. So it happened a lot. People were shaving dogs and neglecting the coated. So at first, all these crazy colors and coat types were coming out. So it took a while to identify which one was part of the breed and what wasn't. So after we had a good stable gene pool, then it came the coat like restrictions, where only a coat that's similar to what we want in the hairless was accepted. So that's why to this day you can still see those coats, because as I say, the breed is super old, but it's new in terms of selection. I mean, it wasn't until the early 90s that it wasn't in danger anymore. So from the early 90s to now, it's just 30 years of selection. And the coateds, they were accepted in 2007, and it wasn't until 2017, I believe, that we were asked to only breed and show short coat. So that's not long time ago. So we're going to be seeing a lot of coats coming out every now and then. Same for the colors. There were some colors that were banned. I think some of them incorrectly banned, but we're going to be seeing those colors coming out because the bloodlines carry it. So we're just trying to start selecting again to keep coated that are the same or have the same type as a hairless. So yeah, that's basically what happened with the coated and why we're going to see those coats. It doesn't mean they are mixes. It just means that they are not typical and they are pets.
But I had one question regarding like structure and why the AKC has different like standards to the FCM. I don't know, getting too ahead of myself, or that's something.
It's because the breed was approved first in the US, and then it was removed because they didn't have that many dogs. So later on, they proposed a breed standard that looked like the first one that we had in the breed, the one that was written in the 50s. So that one was not as specific as the one we have right now, because it was just like a very brief description. It's just one page describing the breed, how it looks. So that's what they used to create the breed standard in the States. And they didn't update it to the way we have it right now. So as time went by, we added the intermediate size, we added more centimeters to the breed because they were small and now they're big. The maximum was, I think, 55 centimeters. I don't know how big is that in inches, but now they are 62. So they grew a lot. So all those changes were done only in FCI, but not in AKC. So AKC is kind of like the old breed standard, like the first, and we updated it. So that's why it shouldn't be that way, but you can see some differences in type between some bloodlines in the States and others here. There are some people breeding to the Mexican breed standard, doing very well in AKC shows. So I'm not sure if later on they're going to be changing it to match the Mexican breed standard, but I do know that there are dogs that fit both. Okay, temperament. The Xolo is silent and calm. I personally don't think they're silent because I have toys and the toys are like super noisy and vocal, but they are alert and intelligent. And this is very important. They might be suspicious towards strangers. For some reason, people think that they are aggressive. They should not. And that the aloofness or being suspicious to strangers means they're shy and scared, and it doesn't mean that way either. So in shows, you cannot expect a dog to act super friendly like a lab, or you cannot expect to get your first Xolo and the puppy is not going to come out of his crate excited to see you. It's not going to happen. This is a primitive breed. They are always alert. Imagine a dog in the wild. They have to watch everything. They have to make sure they survive. So Xolos are that way. They're going to be like this, like worry towards strangers. Even sometimes I'm at home and I move fast and my Xolos are going to be like, whoa, what's going on? That's normal. You cannot expect them to act like another breed. So I think this is very important that we Xolo owners and breeders transmit to other people, especially to people that are like just getting to know the breed. They need socialization. They need a lot of work. You're not gonna get a puppy that's super excited to see you from day one. And most likely an adult is not gonna be that way either. And that's perfectly fine. They don't need to like everybody. Of course, there are gonna be other shows that are super social because either that's their personality or because the owner did an amazing job socializing, but that's not the rule. And also, I see a lot of people saying how they should be or they are aggressive, and they should not confuse being suspicious with aggression. It's very important that I emphasize this because the breed is not aggressive. Now, the head. Here you can see two miniatures. They are not related, but you can see the same type of head. It should be broad and strong and wedge shape. But even though you see it like a strong head, it's not bulky, it's not heavy, it's not like, for example, bullies or pit bulls, they have big heads, they are strong, but you don't see them elegant. And here you can see that the head is elegant, but it's still strong. The stop is the part where the muscle joins the skull. And you see how it's slight? It's not super marked like a Chihuahua that's really marked. So it should be slight. The nose matches the skin color. The lips should be tight and close fitting. Tight means you don't see the cheeks all like wobbly like, for example, a bloodhound. You see the mouth is always closed and the lips look tight. I don't know how other way to explain it, but I think you can see it in the picture, how they don't have like a I don't know how to say it, like a squishy face, like a bloodhound, because I've seen shows like that, and they should not be that way. Now the muscle is straight and square. Here, I think it's tricky that they mention that they're very strong because they lack teeth. So it does look strong, but we must consider it's not like a strong bite where you're gonna see that the muscles of the cheek like super develop, like again a bully that you can see the big cheeks, big mouth. That to me is a very strong mouth. But here you see that the muscle is strong, but not that way. I don't know if it makes sense, because I want to emphasize that they should not look like bullies, because I keep seeing hairless mixes like that. And for the tongue, people keep saying, oh, it's common that they have it outside. It's not. When it's all the way out, it can be that it's a neurological problem because the tongue looks paralyzed. When the tongue is slightly out, it can be because they don't have molars, but when it's slightly, like when they're maybe sleeping and you can see the teeny tiny part of the tongue, or when they get too excited, but it shouldn't be hanging all the way outside. Now they repeat again the head, where skull and muzzle are approximately of equal length. And the stop is slight but well defined. Like here in the picture on the right, you can see the stop where the muscle and the skull join is very slight, but you can see it. You don't see it like a Chihuahua where it's like straight. You can see like the skull and then the muscle comes out. Here is like slight. And you can see how the muscle and the skull have the equal length. And in the examples, the red dog, you don't see the stop. It's like more like a sighthound head. That's not typey. And in the other dog, the muscle is too short. So it looks off. The expression is going to be off. I mean, you think they're Xolos because you see them hairless, but if you see only the silhouette, you can get confused as to what breed this is. So this is what we mean of type. Type is if you only see the silhouette of the dog, you know what dog it is. For bite, the breed standard asks for preferably scissor bite, but also level bite is acceptable. Here you can see what it refers to, scissor bite. Overshot and undershot are not desired. However, hairless Xolos don't have strong dentition. They have shallow roots, so the teeth can move. So this is another part that's tricky when you're judging or showing a dog. You need to check the jaw, not the teeth, because the teeth can rotate to the front. For example, here if you see the teeth, you see that it's like moved towards the outside, so you can get confused and think it's undershot. But if you see the jaws, they're perfectly fine. So this is something that people should consider when breeding. You cannot breed a dog that has an undershot because it's going to pass to the other generation. And that bite is incorrect for the breed. Also, it's not going to be chewing properly. For example, a boxer, because the muscle is short, they tend to have this type of bite, but it doesn't affect them because that's the way the muscle is built. It's short. But in the Xolo, they cannot bite properly. So you must check that they have scissor bite or level bite when you're breeding or showing. And here we see several examples. When they're young, you can see a lot of teeth, but then they're going to be losing them. So you have to pay attention to that as well. Like you cannot judge the same a young dog versus a veteran because they lose teeth as they grow. And also the coatids, they should have full dentition. However, I must mention that after so many generations of hairless to hairless breedings, it can happen that a coat is missing 1 or 2 teeth, and I personally feel it should not be penalized. The eyes are important too. The Xolos should have a medium-sized almond-shaped eye. They are not round, and we are seeing a lot of miniatures and toys with rounded eyes. They are not Chihuahuas. They should have an expression that looks intelligent. Hence the almond eyes. The shape of the eye makes you feel like they're very like alert and intelligent. So we have to focus in trying to go towards the correct shape, because rounded eyes are totally off for the breed in the case of the miniatures. And in their standards, I have seen triangular eyes, which is more like a bull terrier look. Also, the eyes should go according to the skin tone. For example, red dogs will always have yellow eyes. If you have a dog that's red, but the eyes are black, your dog is not red. So that's very important, because I keep seeing also people advertising as this is a very special red color. And then you see the nose is black and the eyes are black. It's not a red. Red dogs will always have light eyes and always yellow. Green eyes and blue eyes are not typical of the breed. Bronze dogs can have amber eyes, which are a little bit darker than the yellow eyes, and a black dog should always have black eyes. Now, there are some dogs that are black and have amber eyes. It's not a fault. It's just that the preference is darker. The only fault is green or blue. This is not in the breed standard, but I think it's very important that we mention this because, again, I keep seeing people saying that it's normal that they have teary eyes. It's not. They can have slightly teary eyes, but it's not always because they don't have eyelashes. You have to be sure that the eye is healthy. They can get eye ulcers, and you're going to see the eye a little bit teary when they have that. Or they can have entropy, which is when the eyelid is rolling inside the eye and rubbing it. So the eye is teary, but it's actually being hurt by the eyelid. So you have to be very careful with the eyes of the Xolo. Also, this is a side as well. Right now, I'm trying to do some research on eyes because hairlessness might also be affecting the tear glands. So you have to make sure that your dog doesn't have dry eye. So it's also important, like it's not normal that they're super teary or that they're like squinting their eyes all the time. So if your dog does this, please make sure you check because eyes are very important and very painful as well. So I always feel bad for the tons of shows that I've seen lately that I'm doing this project with dry eyes or with eye ulcers because it really hurts them. So if your dog has a very teary eye, please take him to the vet. It's not normal. It's not because they don't have eyelashes. The ears. So the breed standard mentions that they are long, large, and expressive, and elegant. They should be of fine texture. Some dogs do have very thick ears. So it's not that it's incorrect, it's just that it's not preferred. So let's try to aim towards elegant, large, and fine texture. They should always be erect when alert. Here, a lot of people say, let them be because they see us tape the ears. And to be honest, the natural ears are erect. Ears are not up. They are mostly because of domestication. So when you see a primitive dog, they always have the ears up. This is a natural. We tape because it's a show dog. We don't want the ears to go wrong. We want to help the dog be the best, look the best. After all, it's a competition. You want your dog to have the best skin, the best weight. So why would you leave the ears like that, risking the dog being ruined? So that's why we tape, not because it's not natural, because you can tape a basset hound and those ears are not gonna get up. You can tape a dog, a Xolo, for a year, and if the ear is not correct, it's not gonna stand. But taping a puppy that has a correct ear set will help him while it's developing because they're growing. And especially when they're teething, the ears are like all over the place. Also, they're so big when they're puppies. It's just to help them a little bit. But the natural ear is this, up. And both should be in the same position. We have certain degrees from 50 to 80. That is correct. When it's too open, like a low ear set, it throws the expression off. Same when it's too high. So we have to look for moderation again, not too low, not too up, too high. I mean. So here I'm showing several examples, and I wanted to use a real dog so you can see how we measure the degrees of the ears. Here's what I mentioned. You see, ears that are too large or too small also throw the expression of the dog off. And when they're puppies, they do have larger ears. And if you're showing a puppy, the ears can also be a little bit like floppy. And that's okay, that's perfectly fine. But if it's an adult, then it means that the ear is not strong enough. This is off standard, but it's also something that I felt it was interesting and important to mention. Hairlessness has been like linked or proved to be linked to closed ear canal. It can happen in Chinese crested, Xolo's Peruvian, any dog that's hairless. So you can see that the ear is closed. They cannot hear from the ear. You can do surgery to open the canal, but not all dogs can hear anyway. So I personally feel it's not necessary, because you're just gonna make the dog go through surgery just to see if they can hear, but it doesn't affect the dog. So I wouldn't put any dog under surgery just to see if they can hear from one ear or not. So you can see two examples of how the ear is completely closed. Sometimes the ear is gonna look deformed, or they're gonna have skin tags. But if you have a dog that has skin tags, it doesn't mean that the ear is closed. But when you have a dog with a closed ear, they will always have skin tags. So if you have a dog that has a tag, just check. If nothing happened, it's fine. So don't worry if your dog has skin tags. Just make sure that they're fine. And it's also important to mention that these dogs should not be bred, because you can pass this to the next generation. And the point of breeding is to, one, preserve the breed, and two, preserve it healthy. Not to have puppies because my dogs are the best and I want to have a puppy from my dog. So we have to be very careful and mindful when we're breeding and when we're showing too. The breed standard is not just for whim, it's just a description of how a healthy Xolo should be. So this is just mostly like overall what we talked about. Like we see the eyes, they go according to the skin color. We can see the muzzle, how it's straight and square. The lips, they are tight and close fitting. If the dog had an incorrect bite, you would see like a sad face. So you can see, even without opening the mouth, because we do open the mouth to see the teeth, you can see without opening the mouth that it's not incorrect. You see the ears, they're long, expressive, and elegant. They're not too big, they're in proportion to the head. The cheeks are slightly developed, they are not cheeky like a bully. And you also see the nose in accordance to the skin color. So this is just like the overall recap of the head. So let's remember, they are the same breed, they should look the same. So we see miniatures with correct heads, and then on the other hand, we see round skulls. And let me tell you, one of these dogs was shown. So saying that a dog has been shown doesn't mean that it's correct. It just means that was entered to a show. So I think this is very important, because people keep saying that it's a show dog. Okay, but is it correct? Is it typical? Is it healthy? That's why we have the breed standard. Now the neck, it's carried high. The dogs do not put the head down like a border collie. I don't know if you've seen or paid attention to border collies when they're walking, that the head is kept low. Shows should not. They have the head high and up. You can see the neck, how it's slim, it's flexible, it looks elegant, and it's slightly arched. You don't want a neck that is too wrinkly. When they're puppies, it happens. When they're older, you don't want a wrinkly dog. And for some reason, people think that hairless should look all super wrinkly. Because I've seen people like showing pictures like on Instagram and all that with extremely wrinkly dogs that are adults. It is not normal or correct. So you can see 3 examples. I don't think you can tell, but one of those 3 examples is a toy. And again, the neck is the same for all 3 sizes. And you also see an example of a short neck. You see how it changes, like the head of the dog, the whole thing, it looks different. So it does not look balanced. Now for the body, we are asked for a strong body with a straight and level top line. Now here, this is important. Saying that a top line is straight, it doesn't mean like a table that cannot move. The back has muscles to allow the dog to move. If you have a dog whose back is extremely straight and not flexible enough, they will not move properly. So that's why the breed center mentions that the back is strong and firm, and the loin is strong and muscular. You need those muscles to move. The croup, it's slightly convex, but it's not too much. Again, I think the key word in the whole breed standard is moderation. Now you see the chest, it should be deep. It goes all the way to the elbows. It's not a big chest like, let's say, a boxer or a sight hound, that it's a big, huge chest. You see, again, it's moderate. It goes all the way to the elbows. It's still big, but it's not exaggerated. The underline is, it says graceful line, muscled and tucked up. But again, it says moderate. You don't want a big tuck up. This is not a Peruvian. This is not a sight hound. It's a primitive breed. You want it moderate. So here you see a standard and a miniature. The standard is a young male, so you can see it's not as muscular as, for example, the miniature is an adult, so it looks a little bit thicker. However, you see that regardless of the size and the age, you see the top line is straight, the chest goes all the way to the elbows. And from the front, you can see them that the upper chest is good. It's not too big, it's not too thin. You see two examples, how it goes all the way to the elbows, and you can see it from the front. We have another example. You see how the chest doesn't go all the way to the elbows in the picture? Now, we should consider the age as well. When they are young, the chest might take a little time to develop. However, it will go all the way down to the elbows. So here you see a puppy. It looks a little bit narrow in the front, but you can see how the chest goes to the elbows. So you have to consider that, the maturity of the dog, but also that doesn't mean that the dog is gonna be okay if the chest is not deep enough. And I like to emphasize on miniatures because of course that's the size that I have, or toys. So here we see two females of the same age, but you can see how one is square and the chest does not go all the way to the elbows. We also see that the underline is too marked, it's too like tucked up. And in the other one, you see how it's square. It goes all the way to the elbows. And although she has a tuck up, it's not too high. And on the other pictures, you see two females of the same age, how the chest goes all the way to the elbow. And in this picture, those females were under a year old. So they were young. And you can see that the chest is still deep. So miniatures and toys should have the same type of standards. And here we see the examples of the underline. You see how it's a graceful line. You see how it's tucked up, but not too much. It's not like a sight hound again. So the tail should be long and thin. They can have some hair, and in movement, they are carried up in a curve. This is interesting because in the AKC, it says it does not go up over the back. And here the wording is different because in Mexico, never touching the back. So this is interesting because, for example, in this example, the dog on the front would be correct in AKC and the dog in the back would be incorrect because the tail is up over the back. But in Mexico, it doesn't touch the back. So we want that. If we see a dog with a tail like that, we're like, oh, this dog is enjoying the ring. And sometimes we're gonna say, oh, that's a shame, your dog didn't put the tail up. Because we want that. We want the dog to move and have the tail up and be happy about it. So that's a very interesting difference between FCI and AKC that I personally think the wording changes a lot. Because it means that a correct dog for us, it's incorrect now in the States. So I think that part is interesting. Now, when it's in rest, it's hanging up in a curve. But here again, it says slight. It's not like an Afghan hound that you see a ring. that is not correct. So again, a tail that touches the back, a tail that curls or has a ring like an Afghan hound, a tail that is too short, either like a bobtail, like it's a teeny tiny tail, or short that doesn't reach the hog, or has a kink, is incorrect. A kink is just like the tail is bent, maybe a vertebrae is not properly set, or they are fused together. Looks like it broke. If it actually broke and it's accidental, it's okay. But if it was born that way, I wouldn't breed it, because the tail is an extension of the whole spine. So why would you breed like a dog that you don't know if it has a correct spine? I mean, that's a very important part. I mean, when they are older, that's the part that you have to take care of the most, because they start to lose movement if the spine is not okay. So I think that we should pay more attention to tails. At least on my side, that's what I'm trying to do. Try to breed for better tails. Okay, so now we go to the legs. Shoulders are flat and they have a good angulation. This is tricky because I keep seeing a lot of dogs that have a flat shoulder, but when they're stacked, they look really good. Why we want the correct angulation of the shoulder? Because if we remember, the breed was set loose. It's a primitive dog that survived in the wild. What do you need to survive? You need to move a lot, long distances. And when your shoulder is not properly set, you're going to have a shorter step. And with a shorter step, you're going to need to give more steps to walk certain distance. So that's why it's important to have good angulations in the front. And a lot of people that are showing or want to breed focus mostly in the rear. And they forget that you also need a good reach. Here you can see two examples of a straight shoulder and a correct shoulder. I made a triangle. That line marks where the leg can stretch. You see how long the step will be of dog A because of the shoulder, and how short the step of dog B is. How many steps does that dog need to take to have or to go the same distance of dog A? Way more. And that means a lot of energy waste. When you're in the wild, you need to like take care of your energy. You need to be efficient. That movement is not efficient. So that's why we have to be mindful of shoulders. And here the breed standard does mention that it allows long, free, and elegant stride. When you don't have good shoulders, the dog is going to pick up the leg faster and look like a little pony. And this is not a Hackney breed. Now from the front, you can see the elbows are strong and they fit close to the chest. They never go out. You see all three sizes, they have straight legs. They should never go elbows out or in. Sometimes when they're puppies, they can be a little bit easty-westy because they grow uneven. But if you're seeing an adult easty-westy, there's something wrong with the shoulders of the dog or the forearms of the dog. They should be firm and they go straight perpendicular to the floor. So you can see all three examples have straight legs. For feet, they should have hare foot. The toes are arched and close together. They are not cat foot, like where the toes are like I don't know how to say, like too close together, like a Doberman. But they should not have flat foot either, because that's not going to allow a proper step. Now, this is important. If you don't trim your dog's nails, the feet is going to go bad. And I keep hearing breeders say, you don't have to trim the nails that much because this is a primitive breed. Primitive breed doesn't mean that you don't groom it. So you do have to have maintenance on the dog. Being hairless doesn't mean that you don't do anything to it. So please trim the dog's nails. Doesn't matter if you're showing or not. So the breed standard also mentions the color of the nails, which is interesting. They go according to the skin color of the dog. They should be black because most shows are dark, but if you have a red dog, the pigmentation is also going to affect the nails. Same for spots. So, and also it's easier to trim white or red nails. They have well-developed membranes. So you can see in the picture how they look like little, how can I say it? Like duck feet a little bit. They're very strong and resistant. And if you have Xolos, I'm pretty sure that you've noticed how they can just grab stuff with their paws. They're really strong. They use their paws a lot. But I personally feel it's because they're primitive. They should be like using their paws and their whole bodies all the time. Now, the breed center also mentioned dew claws, but it refers to the ones on the rear that they don't have bone. I don't like to have them removed if they have bone because I feel it affects the ligaments. So I think it was important to mention that the breed center mentions it because it refers to the ones on the rear that don't have a bone that will not affect the whole structure of the leg of the dog. Now for the rear, it's the same as the front. They should be strong, well muscled, perfectly straight, never too close together. So you don't want a dog that has a too narrow body. You don't want it to have cow hocks either, where it's the hock goes inwards, because it's going to affect movement. Now here's the rear angulation that I was mentioning that a lot of people focus and forget the front. And that hyper focus also creates over-angulated dogs. So people see an over-angulated dog and says, oh, that dog has really good rear. No, it doesn't. It's over-angulated. So the rear is going to try to reach the front, and the front is going to be too short. So the dog is not going to move properly. And that is non-efficient. And in a primitive breed, we want efficiency in movement. So again, the breed center mentions moderate bend. You see, so again, moderation is key. You don't want a dog that's over-angulated or too straight in angulations because again, that's not going to move properly. It's going to need to give a lot of steps to move certain distance. And here you can see the movement of 3 dogs, 3 sizes. And you can see how the movement is correct. It's balanced in the front and in the rear. And the breed center mentions it's a free, long, elegant, springy step. The trot is quick and flowing. Again, head and tail high. And it mentions free, strong movement. If you don't have a balanced dog, the movement is certainly not going to be free or strong, even less long. So that's why we need to pay attention to the way the dog is built. If you have a dog that's too short in body, like we mentioned in the beginning, and the angulations are over-angulated, that dog is going to cross over, and that's non-efficient. Here you're going to see examples of correct movements, different sizes and ages. You see how the step is long, the head is up, and the tail is also up. That movement is efficient. And now you see the incorrect movements. You see how those movements are gonna make the dog tired fast. The example in the middle, the one that says overreaching, that's what I was mentioning. A dog that's too short or is overangulated is going to overreach. And when they do that, they lose energy fast, so they're gonna get tired. And you don't want that in a primitive dog. You want the dog to have energy, sufficient energy, because if they need to run, they have enough energy to do so. If they need to hunt, they have energy to do so. So I think that's why it's important to mention that we want a balanced movement, nothing exaggerated like the overreaching. Now, when the shoulder angulation is short, like I mentioned when I was showing the examples A and B, it's going to do hackney, which is when the leg is pulled back before time. So it looks like a little horse, like a dancing horse. And the hairless variety is very important to keep the skin healthy. It's very important because it's the main characteristic of this variety. The skin is smooth and feels warmer. It's not because they have a higher temperature, by the way. Now, in the hairless, you can have accidental scars and should not be penalized. Also, they can have hair moles, or some people call them eyelashes. These are not penalized. People like to groom those or shave those, and I personally like seeing dogs that have it, because then I know that the dog is naturally hairless. Or you can like show a little bit of a hair mole, but I prefer to see a dog naturally shown with no grooming. The only grooming should be on the skin, not shaving. You can trim whiskers to make the face look cleaner, but there's a big difference of trimming whiskers than making a triangle on the mohawk. Excessive grooming, I don't think is correct. There's people that like it. I personally think that a primitive breed doesn't need excessive grooming. And also, you can see some spots in older dogs. If you're breeding or showing a dog that's maybe over 10 years, you're going to see some spots, and it's perfectly fine. It should not be penalized. And for the coated, the skin should be smooth as well. Here you see two dogs. They have the same type. You can see Xolo in the coated, because there's a lot of people that tell me that they don't see the difference between a coated Xolo and other breeds, and it's because you don't have a correct type. But here you have correct type. You can tell that dog is a Xolo. And the breed standard mentions the hair should be short, flat, and smooth, no undercoat. Same for the hairless. You want hair that's less than 2.5 centimeters. That's like an inch. So you don't want to be cutting that hair, because a lot of people do that. They trim the hair to show, and you're going to see it reflected in the offspring later on. So you do want to breed for a correct coat, regardless of the biority. You want it smooth and short. And here you have some examples of correct coat. You see in all the dogs, it's short. Now they can have slightly long hair on tail and maybe around the neck, but you see it's like the dog like on the right, but it's very, very little. Overall is short. And both hairless and coated are equally important.